She was the soul of ABBA, the voice that wrapped Heartbreak in honey and made the world feel both the joy and the sorrow behind every note. Agnetha Fältskog wasn't just a singer, she was the emotional core of a band that would go on to shape the sound of a generation. But while the world sang along to hits like Dancing Queen and The Winner Takes It All, few realized the price she was paying behind the scenes. Because Agnetha wasn't just performing, she was surviving. Now, decades after the band's rise and fall, Agnetha is speaking openly about the pain she kept hidden behind the spotlight. Her failed marriage to Björn Ulvaeus, fellow ABBA member and the father of her children, wasn't just a personal heartbreak. It became the beating heart of one of the greatest breakup songs of all time. The truth she reveals is raw, it's vulnerable, and it challenges everything you thought you knew about the glittering success of ABBA. Before they were ABBA, before they became household names, they were just Agnetha and Björn, two dreamers in Sweden's fast-growing pop scene. It was 1968, and Agnetha was only 18 when she met the 23-year-old Björn Ulvaeus. He was already something of a local star, riding high with the folk pop group the Hootenanny Singers. She was a bright, rising solo artist, just beginning to make waves with her voice and soft, sincere presence. The connection was instant. There was a spark, musically and emotionally, that couldn't be ignored. While some couples fall in love over time, Agnetha and Björn's bond was immediate and intense. They were drawn together by something deeper than just physical attraction. Music flowed through both of them, and in each other, they found the perfect harmony of ambition, emotion, and creativity. Björn, already respected in the music world, brought a kind of structure and charisma to their connection. Agnetha, with her warm voice and emotional depth, added vulnerability and raw feeling. Together, they felt unstoppable. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and with each shared performance and songwriting session, it grew stronger. To their fans, they were a young couple destined for greatness. But behind the fairy tale image, real life was already beginning to test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. In 1971, at just 21 years old, Agnetha married Björn in a small, picturesque ceremony in the Swedish countryside. It was a private moment surrounded by close friends and family. Benny Andersson, Björn's musical partner and future ABBA co-founder, played the organ. The wedding symbolized the merging of not just two people, but two artistic worlds. That same year, they welcomed their first child, a daughter named Linda. Overnight, Agnetha went from rising star to wife and mother, all while continuing to chase her musical dreams. It was a delicate balance, but for a moment, it seemed possible. Then came 1972. Alongside Benny and Annie-Frid Lyngstad, they officially formed ABBA. The group released their first single, People Need Love. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it set the stage for something bigger. Just 2 years later, everything changed. Their performance of Waterloo at the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest catapulted them into international fame. The song wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon. Suddenly, ABBA wasn't just a Swedish band, they were global pop royalty. But with that success came a tidal wave of pressure. Endless interviews, grueling tours, and the relentless demands of the spotlight began to take a toll, especially on Agnetha. She loved the music, but she missed her daughter. She longed for normalcy. And the more the world asked of her, the less she had left to give at home. Björn, by contrast, seemed energized by the fame. He thrived on the attention, the travel, the writing. While Agnetha craved stillness, he chased momentum. And slowly, the gap between them began to grow. What started as a love story set to music was quietly becoming a ticking time bomb. As ABBA's popularity exploded, so did the expectations. What had started as four friends making music turned into a global brand. There were world tours that lasted for months, back-to-back studio sessions, promotional appearances, press junkets. Every second of their lives became a performance. For Agnetha, the dream was becoming a trap. Behind the glitz, she was cracking. Agnetha had never felt comfortable in the spotlight. She was shy by nature, a quiet soul thrust into a world that demanded constant visibility. The pressure of fame, combined with the agony of being separated from her young daughter, began to weigh heavily on her. She struggled with intense stage anxiety and a growing fear of flying, something that only got worse after a near-disastrous flight. The thought of leaving her child for another tour became unbearable. Björn, meanwhile, appeared to be thriving. Fame didn't scare him, it inspired him. He was writing more than ever, pushing ABBA into new musical territory, constantly driven by creative ambition. And in that pursuit, he became more distant, emotionally and physically. The very music that had brought them together was slowly tearing them apart. They were now two people living parallel lives, connected on stage but disconnected at home. Every award they won, every chart they topped, came with a cost Agnetha could feel deep in her bones. By 1977, their second child, Peter, was born. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like a chance to reset. But ABBA's schedule didn't pause for parenthood. The machine kept running, and Agnetha was caught in a war between motherhood and music, a battle she felt she was losing on both fronts. The emotional distance turned into arguments. The rare quiet moments they once cherished were replaced by cold silences and growing resentment. What used to be a sanctuary, each other, was now just another source of pressure neither could escape. Their personal struggles were invisible to the fans, but on the inside, their relationship was unraveling fast. And what came next would turn their private heartbreak into one of the most unforgettable pop songs ever written. By the end of 1978, Agnetha and Björn made the decision that would change everything. They separated. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a fracture at the heart of one of the world's biggest bands, and the emotional toll was devastating. For Björn, the split felt manageable. He later described it as mutual, claiming they had simply grown apart. But for Agnetha, it was soul-crushing. She felt discarded, heartbroken, and suddenly lost in the very world she had helped build. As if the lights had turned off and no one noticed she was still standing on stage. What followed was not just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a deep internal collapse. And then came The Winner Takes It All. Björn, grappling with his own emotions, poured his pain into lyrics. He wrote it during a whiskey-fueled night in 1979 on the island of Vigsö, where he and Agnetha had once vacationed as a couple. At first, he planned to sing it himself. The lyrics were too raw, too personal. But something changed. He realized only one person could deliver the emotional truth the song demanded: Agnetha. When he played it for her, she cried. The words hit too close to home. It wasn't just a song, it was her life, played back to her line by line. And yet, she agreed to sing it, because she knew, deep down, that something powerful was being born. Her performance in the studio was nothing short of haunting, controlled but brimming with sorrow. Her voice didn't just carry the melody, it carried the weight of everything she had lost. And when the cameras rolled for the music video, filmed just 10 days after their divorce was finalized, the heartbreak was real. The winner takes it all, the losers standing small. Those weren't just lyrics, they were a woman's truth immortalized in song. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece. Fans were moved to tears. And the world unknowingly watched a woman sing through her own grief, transforming it into a global anthem of heartbreak. But for Agnetha, it was never just music. It was survival. When the final note of The Winner Takes It All faded, the world applauded. But for Agnetha, the silence that followed was deafening. After the split, she kept performing with ABBA, smiling on stage, appearing in interviews, still part of the pop juggernaut. But inside, she was unraveling. Her marriage had fallen apart, her sense of self had shattered, and the emotional toll of pretending everything was fine pushed her into a deep, isolating depression. She stopped trusting the world around her. Her fears grew more intense. Crowds, open spaces, flights, everything felt like a threat. The guilt of leaving her children behind during tours gnawed at her. And as ABBA's schedule remained relentless, she began to emotionally shut down. Her English wasn't strong, which only deepened her sense of alienation during international appearances. She went to therapy, searching for something, relief, understanding, maybe just space to breathe. But even as she worked through the pain, the world around her kept moving forward. Björn had a new partner. ABBA had new projects. Everyone seemed to be coping except her. Then came two devastating blows that nearly broke her for good. In 1994, her mother, Birgit, long struggling with depression and trapped in a toxic marriage, ended her own life, jumping from a balcony. Just a year later, Agnetha's father died too. The loss of both parents in such a short time hit her like a freight train. She didn't speak publicly about it, not even to her biographer. Friends later said that something in her changed after that. The light dimmed. The world became something she couldn't trust. She retreated further into solitude, choosing silence over performance, stillness over fame. Her story might have ended there, quietly, tragically, if not for what came next. Something even darker than heartbreak. a chapter that would expose the terrifying side of fame. In the late 1990s, Agnetha's loneliness left her vulnerable. And it was in this fragile state that she crossed paths with Gert van der Graaf, a Dutch forklift driver and longtime obsessive fan. He had followed her for years, moved to Sweden, bought a house disturbingly close to her countryside home on the island of Eckerö. His obsession was no secret, and yet, in her loneliness, Agnetha allowed him in. It started with kindness. He was attentive, intense, relentless in his admiration. And for someone who had felt so unseen for so long, his focus felt comforting at first. She later admitted, "He was so fascinated by me, I just couldn't resist." But the comfort didn't last. The relationship quickly turned dark. His behavior became controlling, erratic, possessive. Friends and family raised red flags, but Agnetha, always trusting, always hoping for the best, ignored them. Until it was too late. He became emotionally abusive, then physically threatening. Agnetha was forced to file police reports. A restraining order was granted. In 2000, van der Graaf was deported to the Netherlands. But he kept coming back, violating court orders, stalking her again. He was arrested multiple times. In 2006, Swedish authorities banned him from entering the country permanently. But the damage was done. That terrifying episode didn't just leave legal scars, it left psychological ones. Agnetha withdrew even further from public life, now not just emotionally wounded, but afraid. Her already fragile sense of safety shattered. She built her home deeper into the woods, surrounded herself with silence, and refused to be seen. The world saw a recluse, but what they didn't see was the trauma behind the retreat. The woman who had once lit up the stage was now just trying to survive. After the trauma, after the heartbreak, after the silence, Agnetha disappeared from public life. She wasn't seen at events. She didn't perform. Neighbors rarely caught a glimpse of her. She built a life surrounded by nature on the island of Eckerö, far from flashing cameras and media frenzy. It was a deliberate retreat, a rejection of the chaos that had nearly consumed her. For years, she didn't sing. She didn't even listen to music. In a rare interview, she admitted, "I just wanted peace." And she found it in the simplest things: gardening, long walks with her dogs, meditation, yoga, spending time with her daughter Linda and her grandchildren. No tours, no spotlights, just life, finally on her own terms. But something within her still flickered. In 2004, after nearly 2 decades of silence, she returned to the studio, quietly, carefully. She recorded My Coloring Book, a deeply personal collection of cover songs from her youth. It wasn't meant to dominate charts, it wasn't a comeback, it was catharsis, a project rooted in nostalgia and healing. To everyone's surprise, the album stayed in the Swedish charts for 25 weeks. Critics praised its sincerity. Fans felt her vulnerability in every track. It was like hearing her voice for the first time all over again, aged, seasoned, but no less powerful. And with that, the door wasn't just cracked open. It was swinging slowly back into place. She began dating businessman Bertil Nordstrom. For a moment, it seemed like stability had returned. But after 3 years, the relationship ended, quietly, without scandal. Agnetha never spoke publicly about why, because by now she had learned, not everything needed to be shared. Some things, especially healing, had to stay sacred. By the early 2010s, Agnetha had found a rhythm, private, gentle, grounded. She was no longer the woman haunted by the past, but she wasn't chasing the future either. She lived simply, without expectation. But once again, music called her back. In 2013, at 63, she shocked the world with a brand new studio album titled A. This wasn't nostalgia, it was new, original work. Collaborating with Swedish producer Jörgen Elofsson, Agnetha pushed herself beyond what even she thought was possible. "I didn't think I could still sing like that," she said, but it was there, waiting. The album was a soft triumph, acclaimed for its emotional honesty and understated elegance. Tracks like When You Really Loved Someone showed a woman who had survived the storm and could now tell the story without breaking. It wasn't just music, it was testimony. And then came ABBA's most unexpected chapter. In 2022, the band reunited for Voyage, a revolutionary virtual concert and their first new album in 40 years. For the first time in decades, Agnetha stepped back into the world, not fully, not physically, but in spirit. Through the avatars and recordings, fans saw ABBA not as frozen icons, but as artists who had endured, aged, and returned. For Agnetha, it wasn't about reclaiming fame. It was about rewriting the ending. And at the heart of it all remained, "The Winner Takes It All." A song born from heartbreak that had outlived the pain, transcended its moment, and become a symbol of survival. Fans still sing it, audiences still cry to it, and Agnetha, now older, wiser, and at peace, can finally stand beside it without flinching. Because she knows now, she wasn't the loser. She was the one who made it through. It's been over 4 decades since the world first heard "The Winner Takes It All." And yet, its power hasn't faded. If anything, it's only grown deeper, more poignant, more real. What most fans never realized is how much truth lived in that song. Written in the aftermath of Agnetha and Björn's painful divorce, sung by the woman still aching from the loss, it was never just a hit. It was a wound, pressed onto vinyl. Björn has always insisted the song wasn't directly autobiographical, but even he admits the emotion in it came from something real. "Great music comes from real experience," he once said, "from pain, from love, from life." Agnetha, she never confirmed how much of the song mirrored her truth. But she didn't need to. Her performance said everything. She wept in the studio while recording. And when she filmed the music video just days after the divorce was finalized, her expression wasn't acting, it was remembering. The public didn't just hear her voice, they felt her grief. "The Winner Takes It All" became an anthem, not just for heartbreak, but for resilience. In 1999, it was voted the UK's favorite ABBA song. In 2006, it was named the greatest breakup track of all time. And when Mamma Mia hit Broadway and later the big screen, Meryl Streep's emotional rendition brought the song to an entirely new generation, still breaking hearts, still telling the story of a woman who gave everything and walked away with nothing but her voice. And that voice, battered but unbroken, still echoes today. Agnetha Fältskog lived the dream and survived the nightmare that came with it. She gave her youth, her love, and her voice to something bigger than herself. And when it broke her, she didn't lash out. She didn't implode. She disappeared. And then slowly, she rebuilt. She found peace not on stage, but in silence. Not in applause, but in solitude. And when she finally returned to the world, she came back not as a star, but as a survivor. One who had nothing left to prove, only truth left to tell. So the next time you hear "The Winner Takes It All," remember what it cost. Not just in lyrics and melody, but in life, in love, and in loss. Because for Agnetha, that song wasn't just a performance, it was a goodbye. And maybe, just maybe, it was the only way she could say it.